Hello and welcome to another video by Rick Miracle. Me, in my series, Freemasonry and Satanism. I've got another crazy book to look at. I've been on a roll lately. But then again, for the past 4 years, it's been an interesting ride. Conspirators, Hierarchy, Story of the Committee of 300. Dr. John Colema. It's like they got Earth there in a box. You think they have us in a box? Conspirators, Hierarchy, the Story of the Committee of 300. So what's it say on the back of the book? The Conspirators' Hierarchy, the Committee of 300 by Dr. John Colema, a former member of the British M16, rips the lid off the conspiratorial group which knows no national boundaries, is above the laws of all countries, controls every aspect of politics, religion, commerce, industry, banking, insurance, mining, and even the drug trade. That sounds like a lot of other organizations I've been talking about. I'll bet they're all connected. Learn how this small elite group, who are answerable to no one except its members, have pulled the strings on all world events, including, I suspect, President Donald Trump announcing that they're moving the embassy from Tel Aviv to Jerusalem and that they're recognizing the USA, even though a lot of people, citizens here, had nothing to do with it, as the capital of Israel. And of course, Israel came about because of the behind-the-scenes planning and executing of World War I, World War II, and Greater Israel is coming about because of 9/11. And changes in the world are coming about because of lots of propaganda, false flags, shootings, bombings, plagues, economic destruction, on and on and on. All of these members are revealed, including all of the corporations, government agencies, and various movements which they have developed and control to further their aims. For world domination, smarter people than me write these books. I just read them and report. These books wind up in obscurity. Nobody knows they're out there, unless we resurrect them. When was this one published? I've had this book for quite a while. I've got like 1,000 books in my office, so I got 800 books I haven't shared yet. I could be at this for a few years. I don't know if we have a few years. All right, 1992. So just about 9 years before 9/11. 2001. So these people have been busy. So who gave that review there? Find out who is at the seat of power of this octopus of evil and whose tentacles reach into your very life and what you can do about it. Thanks for your great book. It is a masterpiece. Wayne Gilbert, Oklahoma. Another reviewer says, you have scored a first. The only book in my library of hundreds that mentions the name Olympians, much less telling the world who and what they are. Bill Cahill, Nevada. So why don't I just get to it and read from it? Throw in my 2 cents. And as usual the case, I don't have to go very far in some of these books to share some exciting information that we need to know. So this is right on the very first page with the foreword. Listen to what Mr. John Colema says here. In my career as a professional intelligence officer for MI6 in Britain, I had many occasions to access highly classified documents. But during service as a political science officer in the field in Angola, West Africa, I had the opportunity to view a series of top secret classified documents which were unusually explicit. What I saw filled me with anger and resentment and launched me on a course from which I have not deviated, namely to uncover what power it is that controls and manages the British and United States governments. So me personally, I've been at this 13 years, and not for nothing, but I've an interesting background of education. I was in the Army 3 years, graduated from two two-year colleges, worked at a major aerospace company. I have a degree in electronic technology. Worked at a major aerospace company for 10 years, high technologies, in a laboratory where I had to punch a code, had a secret security clearance. And then I got laid off around Christmas time with 1,000 other people. And then I spent the next 20-something years running my own business consulting in business and real estate business. And then when I turned the big 50, I decided to direct my life into finding out WTH, what the heck is going on? Because I guess I wasn't stupid. I could observe when I meet customers and I look at their financial data, their bank accounts, and they're going down, 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 and people are losing their home in Argentina, Germany, Florida, New York, Maine, California, all over the world. I said to myself, somebody is intentionally causing the economy to be disrupted. There must be a reason. And I find out now that they let it go up and up and up, then they crash it, and they reap in everything. Think about it. Pawn shops are busy as heck. And then they let it go up and up and up 10, 15 years, 12 years. Then they crash it again. And they reap in everything again. People take stuff to the pawn shops, lose their homes, lose their businesses. Farmers lose their land. It's all orchestrated. Moving on this book. So this Dr. John Colema, our professional intelligence officer, says, I was thoroughly familiar with all of the well-known secret societies, such as the Royal Institute for International Affairs, the RIIA, the Council of Foreign Relations, the Bilderbergers, the Trilaterals, the Zionist, Freemasonry, Bolshevism, Rosicrucianism, and all of the spin-offs of those secret societies. So if the guy was an intelligence officer like the CIA or the FBI, but for Britain, of course he would know about these secret organizations. The only one who doesn't seem to know about all this stuff is the citizen out on the street, the normal man. Most people are oblivious. They don't want to know. They don't even want to know that they're dumping chemicals on their head and they're breathing in those chemicals and heavy metals and maybe bacterial components with God knows what is in it. I do know that the grass in some places, the swampland in Florida, trees, the evergreen trees, fish, bugs, bees, a lot of things are dying. That can't be good for us. There's got to be a plan. And believe it or not, it's in here. As an intelligence officer, sometimes my mouth gets dry, I can't speak. As an intelligence officer, and even before that as a young student in the course of my studies at the British Museum in London, I had cut my eye teeth on all of them, plus a good number of others with whom I imagine Americans were familiar. So a lot of us, when we were young, read about some of this occult stuff, especially psychic stuff, Edgar Cayce, Atlantis. A lot of us, we people, men and women, when we were young, we're inquisitive. We want to know. But when I came to the United States in 1969, I found that the names like the Order of St. John of Jerusalem, the Club of Rome, the German Marshall Fund, the Cini Foundation, CINI, the Round Table, the Fabians, the Venetian Black Nobility, and the Montpelierin Society, the Hellfire Clubs. I think Benjamin Franklin was a part of those. They need to do what the Hellfire Club does, is they do something immoral when they have their meetings. So what do you think is immoral? I guess having sex with children is immoral. Back then, homosexuality is immoral. Killing people is immoral. Stealing from people is immoral. So belong to the Hellfire Club, you do immoral things. And many others were either totally unknown here, or else their true functions were at best but poorly understood, if at all. In 1969 to 1970, I set about remedying the situation in a series of monographs and cassette tapes. Well, he got started way before I did on this stuff. I started in 2005. Not that I was actually asleep. I mean, all of us kind of woke up in 2001. Then, of course, the year 2000 was supposed to be the end of the world. Computers were all going to shut down. In 2012, the Mayan calendar, the world was supposed to end. So a lot of people are kind of aware of just some weird stuff going on continuously. One thing after another. Like President Donald Trump exclaiming in the news that he's declaring the United States of America recognizes Jerusalem as the capital of Israel. And FYI, Jerusalem was owned by the Palestinian people. And there was a dispute. They were even talking about dividing the city. But apparently a lot of Israelis don't want to divide the city or let the Palestinians have any part of it. And they're working at planning, rebuilding King Solomon's temple. This does have a mystery religion, occult connection. Make no mistake about that. When you read and study this stuff, you can't exclude the spiritual component. It is real. These people practice a religion most people can't fathom. But I think when they bring about some big event for martial law in the world or a nuclear holocaust, and then they say they're going to bring about a new world, they're going to create a new religion, a Luciferic satanic religion, and those who won't swear allegiance to it, the preferred method to kill them is beheading them with guillotines. And apparently, if you go online, the U.S. government purchased 30,000 guillotines, not to mention all the FEMA camps and all these other crazy things going on. Back to the book. Much to my surprise, I soon found plenty of people willing to quote these names as if they had known of them all of their writing careers, but who were not in the least bit knowledgeable about the subjects, yet quite unwillingly to state the source of their lately acquired information. And that's why I chose to do book reviews and collect books, to try to show people these books exist and motivate people to go get them so maybe we can wake each other up. I consoled myself with the thought that imitation is the sincerest form of flattery. So he says he was producing monographs and cassette tapes. I guess that's like some kind of record back then in 1969, speaking records. And then people were out there touting this information and they were copying him, which he sees as a form of flattery. I pursued my investigations, pressing on in the face of the severe risk. So here he was, an intelligence officer, retired, I guess, and he turned alternate news guy making cassette tapes, and pressing on in the face of severe risk, attacks on myself and my wife, financial losses, continual harassments, threats culminate, all part of a carefully crafted and orchestrated program to discredit me, run by government agents and informers embedded in the so-called Christian right wing and the identity movement and the right-wing patriot groups. These agents operated and still operate under a cover of strong and fearless outspoken opposition to Judaism, their main enemy. They would have us believe. And I've been doing a lot of research, and that's the way it is. Just like they wanted everybody to believe that Obama was against Israel. Well, if you go on the computer and look it up, I think it was 2015 or 16, but never before in any one year had so much money been approved for Israel under the Obama administration. So just like he says here, outspoken opposition to Judaism, their main enemy, they would have us believe. Deception is the key in all this. These agent informers are led and controlled by a group of homosexuals who are well liked and well respected by political and religious conservatives all across the United States. Their program of calumny, lies, and hatred, disinformation about my work, even lately attributing it to other writers, continues unabated, but it has not had the desired effect. I shall carry on with my task until I have finally ripped off the mask of the entire secret upper-level parallel government that runs Britain and the United States. This book is a part of an ongoing effort. Dr. John Colema, November 1991. Wow. How many years ago? Almost 30. All right, moving on to the next page, an overview and some case histories. And I encourage people to get this book. It's just packed full of information. Names, dates, actions, events. It tells all. Published, like I said earlier here, 1992. So this information was out there for quite a while. Why the heck haven't we the people woken up? I don't know. I was out in 92. From 1980 to 1990, I spent 10 years at a major aerospace company. So I was surfing and fishing and water skiing and enjoying my youth. Certainly, a fair number of us are aware that the people running our government are not the people who are really in control of political and economic matters, domestic and foreign. This has led many to seek the truth in the alternate press. This is back in 1992. Those newsletter writers who, like me, so that's how they did it back then. They didn't have these alternate news websites. They had these individuals sitting at home with a typewriter or whatever, sending out newsletters. like me, who sought but not always found what it is that is making the United States terminally ill. Seek and ye shall find has not always been the case with this group. What we did find was that people walk in great darkness, mostly not caring or bothering to find out where their country is headed, firm in the belief that it will always be there for them. And even I have to say, things are changing, and they're changing fast. The clock is ticking. This is the way the largest population group has been manipulated to react, and their attitude plays right into the hands of the secret government. We frequently hear about they doing this or that or the other. They seem literally to be able to get away with murder. They increase taxes, send our sons and daughters to die in wars that do not benefit our country. They seem above our reach, out of sight, frustratingly nebulous when it comes to taking action against them. No one seems able to clearly identify who they are. It is a situation that has pertained for decades. During the course of this book, we shall identify the numerous they, and then after that, it is up to the people to remedy their situation. On 30 April 1981, I wrote a monograph disclosing the existence of the Club of Rome, identified it as a committee of 300 subversive body. This was the first mention of both of these organizations in the United States. I warned readers not to be fooled by the feeling that the article was far-fetched, and I drew a parallel between my article and the warning issued by the Bavarian government when the secret plans of the Illuminati fell into its hands. We shall return to the Club of Rome and the role of the Committee of 300 in the United States affairs later herein. So I thought about that Club of Rome, and I am reminded that series number 27 of my books, The Limits of Growth from the Club of Rome, says it on there. So go watch my video. But back then, this book was published in 1974. The Club of Rome was worried about overpopulation. So how all this happened, according to my research, after World War II, some of these elites, I consider World War II for these elites to have been a huge success. The reason World War II was fought was a similar reason World War I was fought, was to destroy the Ottoman Empire over there in Turkey in the Greece area, north of the Middle East, between Europe. The Ottoman Empire controlled the Middle East, controlled Palestine, controlled Syria, controlled all of that. It was an empire, like France, Germany Empire, the British Empire, the growing United States of America, China, the Ottoman Empire. So for religious purposes, the ancient mystery religion, they needed to get the land, the Holy Land, back. So that's 100 years of activities and wars. Even the French Revolution, or taking over the USA money supply in 1913, Christmas time, when all the politicians were on Christmas holiday. All right, back to the book. This was the first mention of both of these organizations in the United States. So the Committee of 300 and the Club of Rome. And the Club of Rome in 1974 is writing books about overpopulation. All this is going to come together. I warned readers, so he was warning readers back in 1981, not to be fooled by the feeling that the article was far-fetched. And the Bavarian government apparently discovered secret plans of the Illuminati in the early 1800s, I think. It was a courier riding a horse, and of all things, lightning struck him, and they found his dead body, but in his pouch were a manuscript for the plans for taking over the world, like the Protocols of Zion, the Jewish document for their plans taking over the world. And I'm connecting the Illuminati with the Jewish Zionist elite, not all Jewish people, and with all the secret societies and the secret mystery religion. Back to the book. We shall return to the Club of Rome and the role of the Committee of 300 in U.S. affairs later herein. Many of the predictions made in the 1981 article have since come to pass, such as the unknown Felipe González becoming the Prime Minister of Spain, and Mitterrand being returned to power in France, the downfall of Giscard d'Estaing and Helmut Schmidt, the return of power to the Swedish nobleman and Committee of 300 member Olof Palme, the nullifying of Reagan's presidency, and the destruction of the steel and auto and housing industry in terms of the post-industrial zero growth orders handed down by the Committee of 300. So the Committee of 300 back then issued a dictate to all their stooges, political leaders all over the world, if these people are actually put into office via these secret societies, that they wanted a post-industrial zero growth world. So they were doing all this propaganda, the limits to growth, and other books I've gone over, Series 35, you can go watch my video, The Population Bomb, and it says right on the cover, Population Control or Race to Oblivion, and this was published (1968). So they were concerned after the 1948, after World War II was over. These elites were planning a new world order. And remember, we were ending the age of Pisces and entering the age of Aquarius. And this is a mystery religion. And the constellations are indications of a new age, a new world order. It's all connected. All right, the importance of Palme lies in the use made of him by the Club of Rome to deliver technology to the Soviet Union on the forbidden list of technology equipment of the U.S. Customs. So these secret societies can get things done by the back door, and most people will agree with that. And Palme's worldwide communication network employed to train the spotlight on the phony Iran hostage crisis while he shuttled back and forth between Washington and Tehran, Iran, in an effort to undermine the sovereign integrity of the United States and place the phony crisis in the realm of the Committee of 300 institution via the World Court at Hague, Holland. In what is in fact an open conspiracy against God and man, which includes enslaving the majority of humans left on this earth after wars, plagues, and mass murder have done with them, is not well hidden. I'm going to read that again. In what is in fact an open conspiracy against God. Remember, this is an anti-God religion, a secret mystery religion. As per the Bible. People don't want to buy that component of this conversation. And that's okay. But these people who are conspiring believe it, whether I want to believe it or you want to believe it. Against God and man, which includes enslaving the majority of humans left. So they plan on depopulating the planet. Even the Georgia USA Guidestones indicate that, and so much more. I've got the books. There's many more books. These people have said it. Bill Gates has said it. Ted Turner said it. The prince over there, the Queen's son, said it. He said if he could come back to Earth after he died, he'd like to come back as a virus and kill everybody. Mass murder have done with them is not well hidden. In the intelligence community, it is taught that the best way to hide something is to place it in open view. An example of the foregoing, when Germany wanted to hide its prized new Messerschmitt fighter plane in 1938, the aircraft was put on display at the Paris Air Show. While secret agents and spies were collecting information from hollow tree trunks or from behind loose bricks in a wall, the information they sought was staring them right in the face. The upper-level parallel secret government does not operate from dark basements and secret underground chambers. It places itself in full view of the White House, Congress, and in number 10 Downing Street, and the House of Parliament. It is akin to those weird and supposedly terrifying monster films, where the monster appears in distorted features, long hair, and even longer teeth, growling and slavering all over the place. This is a distraction. The real monsters wear business suits and drive to work on Capitol Hill in limousines. I really regret when I do these videos, I can't get enough information in 2 hours. But that's why I do 2 hours. At least I can get some of it in there. These men are in open view. These men are the servants of the one world government, New World Order. Now remember the dates when this guy was doing this, back in 1981. And remember who he was. He's an ex-intelligence officer for British MI6. Back then people were doing newsletters to get the word out. People were awake. Like the rapist who stops to offer his victim a friendly ride, he does not look like the monster he is. If he did, his intended victim would run off screaming in fright and not get in the car. Then she wouldn't get raped. The same applies to the government at all levels. President Bush does not look like the dutiful servant of the upper-level parallel government, but make no mistake about it, he is much a monster as are those horrors found in the horror movies. So President Bush Sr., according to this intelligence officer, was working for the secret government. But a lot of us know that. Before he was president, he was with the CIA, with some interesting connections to the assassination of President John Kennedy. You can go look it up. Stop for a moment and consider how President Bush ordered the brutal slaying of 150,000 Iraq troops in a convoy of military vehicles carrying white flags on their way back to Iraq under the Geneva Convention rules of agreed disengagement and withdrawal. So this book here was published in 1992. So certainly this was the first invasion of Iraq. And he's with the brutal slaying of 150,000 people. Well, let me read on. So under the Geneva Convention, it was supposed to be an agreed disengagement and a withdrawal. The troops were marching back home from the line of the country. Imagine the horror of the Iraq troops when, in spite of the wavering of their white flags, they were mowed down by American aircraft. In another part of the front, 12,000 Iraqi soldiers were buried alive in trenches they occupied. Is that not monstrous in the truest sense of the word? From where did President Bush get his orders to act in this monstrous fashion? He got them from the Royal Institute for International Affairs, the RIIA, who receives its mandate from the Committee of 300, also known as the Olympians. So you know me, I went to look up the Olympians. I found a couple websites. Plenty of material out there if you want to look. This one is at bibliopallades.net. I wrote it on the top here, but if you look up the Committee of 300, the Olympians, you'll find this information. So I thought I'd read from this page. This is very interesting information. How many people know this stuff? Thanks to the sworn testimony of Guarizani, Italy, and Europe, but not the USA, learned that Kissinger was behind the death of Aldo Moro. So the sworn testimony learned that Kissinger was behind the death of Aldo Moro. This tragic affair demonstrates the ability of the Committee of 300 to impose its will upon any government without exception. Secure in his position as a member of the most powerful secret society in the world, and I'm not talking about Freemasonry, Kissinger not only terrified Moro, but carried through in his threats to eliminate Moro if he did not give up his plan to bring economic and industrial progress to Italy. And I think a lot of us after 9/11 are aware of the invasion of Libya, overthrowing the president there, Gaddafi. And if you go look it up, Gaddafi had a lot of gold because of the oil, and he was willing to be the bank for Northern Africa, lending money to all those countries. Get this, interest-free. You know that had to upset the globalists, these people. In June and July 1982, the wife of Aldo Moro testified in open court that her husband's murder came about as a result of serious threats against his life made by what she called a high-ranking United States political figure. Miss Eleanor Moro repeated the precise phrase reportedly used by Kissinger in the sworn testimony of Guarizani: either you stop your political line or you will pay dearly for it. Recalled by the judge, Guarizani also asked if he could identify the person Miss Moro were talking about. Guarizani replied that it was indeed Henry Kissinger, as he had previously intimated. John Colema, The Story of the Committee of 300. So they reference in this book I'm going over on this website. The Order of the Garter, another one of these mystery schools, like the Knights Order of the Knights of Columbus, the Knights of Malta, Rosicrucians, Illuminati, Freemasons, and so many more, thousands of them. Some of these groups are mentioned here. The Order of the Garter is the secret inner group, which is an elite group within the Order of St. John of Jerusalem, which is the British part of the Knights of Malta. The Knights of the Garter are the leaders of the Committee of 300. Do you see what I'm saying here? It's these mystery school occult organizations under the many different names. They are diabolical men, according to what it says here. Lord Peter Carrington, who is a member of the Satanic Order of Osiris. I've been saying these things all along. The Satanic Order of Osiris. And guess who's on the back of the $1 bill? Osiris's son, Horus, represented by the all-seeing eye. And other demonic groups is a member of the Order of the Garter. Lord Palmerston is an example from history of another similar example of the Knight of the Garter, who was totally corrupt and pretended to be a Christian and practiced Satanism. And this is in the Bloodlines of the Illuminati. I guess that's Fritz Springmeier's book. I have that under the topic DuPonts. So this stuff I've been researching, I'm just continuing to see collaboration and confirmation that all these things I'm learning are in fact the way it is. To bring about depopulation, it says it on this letter here, of large cities according to the trial run carried out by Pol Pot regime in Cambodia. I guess a lot of people remember all the death in Cambodia. It is interesting to note that Pol Pot's genocidal plans were drawn up in the United States by one of the Club of Rome's research. And of course, we got the book here by the Club of Rome, The Limits to Growth. I made a video on that. And this book, The Population Bomb, I made a video on this, number 35. So when I'm reading this stuff, I'm saying, I made a video on that. I've got that book. And you can go on used book sites and sometimes find these books for $2 and $3 with free shipping on websites like abebooks.com, which I have nothing to do with abebooks.com. And then there's other used book sites you can check before you buy the book. Get a library like I do, and it seems like the prices of the books are going up. So it might be an interesting investment if you are inclined to invest antiques or things like that. I like to buy the oldest books I can find. All right, so the Club of Rome's research foundations, overseen by the Thomas Enders, a high-ranking State Department official. It is also interesting that the committee is currently seeking to reinstate the Pol Pot butchers in Cambodia, and that's in Targets of the Illuminati and Committee of 300 by John Colema. And then they got this group called the Olympians. I hope you got a notebook and you're taking notes if you're listening to my video or watching it. You go look this stuff up. It's fascinating, the material you find. The Committee of 300 is modeled after the British East India Company Council of 300. The British East India Company, wasn't it the company that the Pilgrims, the Patriots for American independence, threw the tea overboard because they were being taxed? That was the British East India Company. So it's been around for a while. Founded by the British aristocrats in 1727. So I guess the power players in the world, they haven't changed. Their descendants just keep taking over. Most of the immense wealth arose out of the opium trade with China. This group is responsible for the phony drug wars here in the United States. These phony drug wars were to get us to give away our constitutional rights. Asset forfeiture is a prime example, where huge assets can be seized without trail and no proof of guilt needed. Also, the Committee of 300 long ago decreed that there shall be a smaller, much smaller, and better world. That is the idea which constitutes a better world. So their vision of a future world is with a lot fewer people. So they think that they own the world and it's all for them. And if they have an excess population, they need to be killed off. And they're into this satanic religion, mystery school that William Cooper talks about. I've got his book here. It's got information about the things we're talking about also. I made a video on this book, Behold a Pale Horse, a sentence out of Revelations in the Bible. Series number 46. Go online and look up William Cooper and find some of his videos. Fascinating to watch his videos. There's a lot of this confirmation information in that book, as well as this other book I was looking at. David Icke's book confirms all this information too. A lot of these researchers, David Icke, The Biggest Secret. So I went there and referenced all that. And another thing they mentioned in this book was the open conspiracy. I made a video on this. That's series 62. And H.G. Wells. I mentioned this often enough. The David Icke one was series number 20. I have half a dozen of the David Icke books. So I've got a lot of other references to the story from Dr. John Colema's book I'm going over in all these other books and many others. Let me finish this document and get back to the book. The myriads of useless eaters consuming scarce natural resources. So this is back then, 20, 30, 40 years ago, this is what they thought. And the planet's a pretty big planet. There's plenty of resources, actually. But they've got people believing that there's too many people and there's no more resources. That's part of the mind control. Believe it or not, if you do any homework at all, you'll know they're only scraping off a couple feet of the surface of the planet, and they've only mined in a few places. There's a whole planet. They're polluting it and destroying everything intentionally because they're trying to create a need, a scarcity. So that, of course, will start to cause more uprisings in the communities all over the world for something planned in the future, a culling of humans, I guess. So the useless eaters need to be culled. Industrial progress supports population growth, so they need to stop industrial progress. Therefore, the command to multiply and subdue the earth found in Genesis had to be subverted. So in the Bible it says to multiply and subdue the earth. And I believe in God. I believe in the spiritual realm and all that. And I don't think anything is impossible. So if people were to have more faith and belief in God, I think some impressive miracles could happen. But the contrary thing is going on right now. People are not believing in God. And these secret societies are polluting the planet and killing off almost everything. Look at Fukushima and the radiation and the fish out in the Pacific Ocean. It's a horrible state of affairs if it's true. I believe it's true. All right. This called for an attack on Christianity, the slow but sure disintegration of industrial nation states, the destruction of hundreds of millions of people, referred to by the Committee of 300 as surplus population, and the removal of any leader who dared to stand in the way of the committee's global planning to reach the foregoing objectives. and hence President John Kennedy's famous speech where he says secret societies are repugnant to the way of life in the United States, and I am going to expose them. Something like that. You can just go online and put President John Kennedy's famous speech and listen to it for yourself. Not that the U.S. government didn't know, but it was part of the conspiracy. It helped to keep the lid on the information rather than let it be known. Queen Elizabeth, global planning to reach the foregoing. Queen Elizabeth is the head of the Committee of 300. And David Icke and many others are talking about shapeshifters, and these people are hybrid human beings, so they're saying. I haven't weighed in on that one way or the other yet. I continue to research aliens, UFOs, and these beings. I'm going to go over some more material, the channeled material, communicating with invisible beings from the other realm, and all of my books here, 100 or more on UFOs and aliens that I haven't gone over. It's very fascinating investigation, and it just goes on and on and on. There's so much. But I do believe if you continue to watch the videos and get books and take your time, you do get a more clearer perception of reality. At least it's worked that way for me. The Committee of 300 looks to social convulsions on a global scale. So the Committee of 300 wants to bring about social convulsions. That's upheavals and destructions, followed by depressions as a softening up technique for bigger things to come, as its principal method of creating masses of people all over the world who will become its welfare recipients of the future. So, and I've been saying this a while, we people need to start growing our own food and being ready for this. They're trying to stop all of those kinds of activities, even in some communities, banning people from having fireplaces. So when they turn off the switch, people don't know how to grow things or how to purify water, how to build an outhouse, how to survive and stay healthy. And they're doing that intentionally because when they can control everything, they can turn it off anytime they want. The committee appears to base much of its important decisions affecting mankind on the philosophy of Polish aristocrat Felix Dzerzhinsky, who regarded mankind as being slightly above the level of cattle. As a close friend of British intelligence agent Sidney Riley, Riley was actually Dzerzhinsky's controller during the Bolshevik Revolution formative years. He often confided in Riley during his drinking bouts and binges. Dzerzhinsky was, of course, the beast who ran the Red Terror apparatus. So when they performed or executed the Russian Revolution, so they call it, I call it invasion orchestrated by the governments after World War I. They abducted the Tsar, the leader of Russia, and his family, took them to an old farmhouse and machine gunned them all to death, and then proceeded to kill, it said, 100 million Christians and other good people in Russia over the next 10 to 15 years. After World War I. How many people know about that? Did 100 million people get killed in World War I? I don't think so. But after that, when they invaded Russia, with military troops from even the USA and stuff, controlling train stations and all this, it was orchestrated. The Bolshevik Jewish people. That's an interesting story all by itself. It was revenge. Because before that, in the 1800s, even 1700s, but the 1800s, the Russian Tsar and the leadership, the police, were curbing down on some of the problems they were having with the Jewish people in Russia and the area. Something called pogroms, restrictions and laws, restraints on their activity. And so a lot of the Jewish people were fleeing to Germany and found safe haven and even prospered and thought they had found their utopia, their Garden of Eden in Germany before World War I. And then Germany had a war with Britain because Germany was excelling in the industrial evolution. They were doing a lot of mining and making steel and locomotives and all that stuff. So in the area, and of course they're on the mainland, they were growing. And Britain's on the island and all that, controlling a lot of different countries around the world. And they were losing hold of that. So Britain had to go to war with Germany to suppress them and destroy them because they were excelling in the industrial revolution. And the Jews there were probably part of that great success, being industrial people themselves and making money and all that stuff. But during World War I, some high-level elite Jewish people had a brainstorm and said, whoa, Britain is losing, but we can use this to our favor. And I made videos on these books on these topics. That the Balfour Agreement, that we'll get you the money and get the USA in the war. And before that, the US was pro-German, by the way. Remember, we declared independence from Britain. And they controlled Woodrow Wilson. They put him in the presidency in the United States. And it was at that time with Woodrow Wilson that they also managed to take control of the USA money supply in 1913. The war started 6 months later in 1914. So they turned traitor all those successful Jewish people in Germany. And a lot of them didn't want to, but the higher-ups dictate what goes on in that nation that at that time had no homeland. Very interesting story. So anyways, after all that, Russia was weak, and they invaded Russia to get revenge for those pogroms going on in the 1800s and before, when the Jewish people were being policed. Oh my! Dzerzhinsky was, of course, the beast who ran the Red Terror in Russia. And then, of course, the Reign of Fire in the late 1700s in France, when they had that revolution, was also orchestrated with many of these revolutionary Jewish people behind the scenes, as I've gone over with the Freemasons and Illuminati in series 1803 or series 173 or 174 or 171 or 170. So many of the books have been verifying all this information. So, you know, you can think of the French Revolution like a world war. And then, of course, World War I, World War II. And you can think of the Russian Revolution where they invaded it with 100 million people like a world war. And then later on in 48 or not too much longer, the revolution in China where millions and maybe 100 million or more people killed. You can think of it as a world war. Then you can think about what happened after 9/11 and how many years? 16 years of destroying all the nations in the Middle East. Would that be a world war? But the people are not aware of this. The hammer is coming down all over the world. And they don't plan on letting the United States alone. Slowly, they are destroying our environment and our ability to survive economically. They're supporting it right now. And of course, the stock market's shooting up like a rocket. And all I got to do is turn it off. Anyways, there's a chart here. I guess Dzerzhinsky, who was involved in the Russian Revolution, this is how these people think, told O'Reilly, I think Riley and I think O'Reilly. Riley, when the two men were on a drinking binge, that man is of no importance. Look at what happens when you starve him. He begins to eat his dead companions to stay alive. Man is interested in his own survival. That is all that counts. Is this what these people think of us? Anyways, there's a chart here if you want to parse your computer or go look up the document. But it shows the structure of all the other organizations. So I did do some looking around here. Back to the book. So where I left off was President Bush ordering the brutal slaying of 150,000 Iraq troops machine gunned down or bombed down, incinerated, burnt alive. And also on another side of the country, another front line, 12,000 Iraq troops were buried alive in trenches they occupied. And poor Iraq has suffered. But how many other countries have been suffering? Look at the betrayal, what happened to Germany in World War I. But they didn't take down the Ottoman Empire enough, or they didn't get the land of the Palestine, so they had to have World War II. And of course in 1880, somewhere around there, Albert Pike, Morals and Dogma, the Bible for the Freemasons, wrote a letter to his friend Mazzini in Italy and said there would be 3 world wars required to bring about the New World Order. And even Albert Pike is said to have communicated with beings from the other side, masters, like Nina Blavatsky, Alice Bailey, Annie Besant, the Rosicrucians, all these other entities initiated into the secret mysteries, all the channeled material. People don't want to know or think that that world is real. We're all spiritual beings in these biological bodies if you do any research. People get put in a trance or hypnotized and they get to discover their past lives, or the government's into remote viewing. I made many videos on the different remote viewers. David Morehouse, Tim Rifat, the book by Jim Mars. Anyways, we were talking about the Olympians. You need to look this up if you want to find out who's controlling the world. Olympians, what's that remind you of? Olympus, the mythology, Zeus, the gods in heaven on a cloud looking down on humanity. The Olympians do not hide their faces. Oftentimes, they put on a show which could be likened to a Paris air show, even as conspiracy buffs spend their time fruitless searches in the wrong places and in the wrong direction. Note how the Queen Elizabeth II performs the ceremonial opening of the British Parliament. There in full view is the head of the Committee of 300. Have you ever witnessed the swearing-in ceremony of a United States president? There in full view is another member of the Committee of 300. The problem is only one of perception. So like I said earlier, President Donald Trump issuing a dictate that the United States recognizes Jerusalem as the capital of Israel is no small thing. And all over the Middle East, if you pay attention to the newspaper, December 8th, 2017, the uproar, Pakistan, Turkey, withdrawing their ambassadors, angry at the U.S. It's creating insanity over there. And I'm here to tell you, that was part of the plan. You don't have to be a genius to figure that out. Who is Donald Trump to make such a decision? They've been fighting for Jerusalem for hundreds of years. They finally got it. Do you understand the euphoric state these mystery religion, Kabbalistic, Zionist, secret society people are in right now? They're getting what they want. They're getting closer to this new age and new world order, the global empire. Something's going to happen, maybe, that they'll even execute depopulation. I'm just using my common sense, 2 plus 2. Why did President Donald Trump do that at this time? Plus some other things he's done. When he said he was going to make America great again. I guess if they have a revolution here in the United States and people who disagree with this satanic looming new future will have to be arrested and purged. Surrender your belief in Jesus, Christianity, righteousness, decency, moral values. Embrace the homosexual, transgender, do as thou wilt, Mad Max, Hunger Games reality, enslaving people. Hold on. Back to the book. Who are the conspirators who serve the mighty, all-powerful Committee of 300? The better informed of our citizens are aware that there is a conspiracy and that the conspiracy goes under various names such as the Illuminati. Now, this is an intelligence officer who wrote this book in 1992, who was writing newsletters in 1981. And he's saying these words. I've been doing a lot of research and I'm reporting what I believe, so it's a little bit helpful to me in my confidence because, I believe I know what I know, but people go, oh, you're crazy, Rick. Go back on your meds. Put your tinfoil hat back on. So I'm reading this book by an intelligence officer, 1992, who's saying all this stuff, and he goes on the various names of these organizations are the Illuminati. And I've been going over other books, encyclopedias from 1803 on the Illuminati and on the Freemasons. And Masonry Illustrated in 1905, Series 171. Manly Hall, the Lost Keys of Freemasonry with Isis, Osiris, the satanic religion. And this is 178, this book. That's 178 books and some videos like the Freemasonic Handbook, Series 61. 12 2-hour videos. So I've got over 400, almost 450 videos, well over 600 hours. So in this book, it says the various names: Illuminati, Freemasons, the Round Table, the Milner Group, and to them, the Council of Foreign Relations and the Trilaterals. I just did that one book, 177, on the Trilaterals. We have to look at that again. And the Proofs of a Conspiracy, 176, by Dr. John Robinson. Secret Society, Series 175. So I just thought I was on a roll here, and I've got a few more books, quite a few more books on these topics by famous, educated, knowledgeable people. Are we to believe this information? I think we better believe it. We better wake up. And again, if they're taking control of the water supply, the energy, everything, the food, they could put anything they want to in those crackers manufactured at one of those secret society owned plants. If 50% of the world population are eating those crackers or those particular cereals for children, they can put toxins in there anytime they want. Can't they? They can. Should we be concerned? Should we trust them? We know what they're doing. They're dumping chemicals in the sky. The depopulation plans seem to be in play. I'm just asking myself questions. But of course, right now, the First Amendment is still in force, I believe, free speech. But how long will they take that down with all this fake events like White Lives Matter, Black Lives Matter, inciting peoples for hatred and fighting and rioting in the street? Sooner or later, they'll make a law that says, you can't say anything negative. You can be arrested. It's a crime. It's in this book. 1984. George Orwell. They made movies about it. When they outlaw books, outlaw free speech, outlaw free thinking. Oh my, I don't know if I'd want to be on planet Earth when all this comes about. But it looks like I might be here. But I'm not going to let them drive me insane. And I hope people watching this video spread the word around. Whatever they do, we need to not react like insane people. If we didn't do it, they've studied us like rats. They believe they know how we're going to act. It's in this material. We need to disappoint them. We need to be rational, calm people and stand around and going, okay, we see what you're doing. But we're not going to respond the way that you think we should. They crash the money supply. People start freaking out. Don't do anything. Don't sell anything. Don't buy anything. Leave your stocks there. Leave your money there. Everybody. The next day they got to fix it. Only if we go crazy have they accomplished something. That's my opinion. So anyways, some even know that the Round Table has a big input in United States affairs through the British ambassador in Washington. The problem is that real hard information on the treasonous activities of members of the invisible government is very hard to come by. And again, I point out, this is a retired intelligence officer. He says, I quote the profane statement made by the prophet Hosea, which is found in the Christian Bible. My people perish for lack of knowledge. Some may already have heard my expose on the foreign aid scandal, in which work I have named several conspiratorial organizations whose number is legion. They have all these organizations, even like the Sierra Club and all this. People donate money. They think they're doing something good. They're feeding the beast, in my opinion, from my research. The final objective is to overthrow the U.S. Constitution and the merging of this country, chosen by God as his country, with a godless one, the New World Order government, which will return world to conditions far worse than existed in the Dark Ages. So they want to bring hell to planet Earth, our reality. They're working at it very slowly, putting all the controls in place. This 5G network doesn't seem to be a good thing in our future. They can turn up the power and actually microwave us. There's even legislation passed here in North Carolina that there will be no public input from communities for installing these systems. Why would they do that? I've showed those press releases in my previous videos. All right, let us talk about actual case histories. An attempt to communize and deindustrialize Italy, the Committee of 300 long ago decreed that there shall be a smaller, much smaller, and better world. That is their idea which constitutes a better world. The myriads of useless eaters consuming scarce natural resources are to be culled. Page 4. Industrial progress supports population growth. Therefore, the command to multiply and subdue the earth found in Genesis had to be subverted. Page 5. This called for an attack on Christianity. And I've been saying this. Remember, this is an intelligence officer in 1992. Gotta go look and check. It's 1992. He said this. An intelligence officer, doctor, educated. He should know. We'll get this book. So I'm barely going to touch the surface. This called for an attack upon Christianity, the slow but sure disintegration of industrial nation states. So industrialism, success and mining and all this other stuff, to these people gives us a healthy population and population growth and healthy people. So they have to destroy it. The destruction of hundreds of millions of people, referred to by the Committee of 300 as surplus population, and the removal of any leader who dared to stand in the way of the committee's global planning to reach the foregoing objectives. Two of the committee's earliest targets were Italy and Pakistan. The late Aldo Moro, Prime Minister of Italy, was one leader who opposed zero growth and population reductions planned for his country, thereby incurring the wrath of the Club of Rome, commissioned by the Olympians, these elites, to carry out its policies in this regard. In a Rome courtroom in November 10th, 1982, a close friend of Moro's testified that the former prime minister was threatened by an agent of the Royal Institute for International Affairs, the RIIA, who was also a Committee of 300 member, while he was still the U.S. Secretary of State. The meteoric rise of a man, the witness named as Kissinger, will be dealt with later in this book. It will be recalled that Prime Minister Moro was kidnapped by the Red Brigades in 1978 and subsequently brutally shot to death. It was at the trial of members of the Red Brigade that several of them testified to the fact that they knew of high-level U.S. involvement in the plot to kill Moro. So here's Moro, like other people I've been mentioning in my videos, trying to protect his people and his country. And these secret societies, secret mystery school cult members and leaders want to kill anybody trying to do the right thing for the people. So what does that tell you about the presidents we have now? Presidents we just had. Presidents in other countries all over the world. The European Union, where they don't elect their leaders anymore. They're chosen for them with the European Union. That's what they want. And they want to make it look natural when they release a plague or something, or an EMF, electromagnetic pulse, or maybe a solar ray from the sun. They'll blame it on something. Maybe aliens, Project Bluebeam. Go look this stuff up. When threatening Moro, Kissinger was obviously not carrying out United States foreign policy, but rather acting in according to instructions received from the Club of Rome, the people who are worried about too many people, the limits of growth, the population bomb in 1969. I got the books. The witness who delivered the bombshell in open court was a close associate of Moro's, Gerardo Gorzini. His explosive testimony was broadcast over Italian television and radio on November 10th, 1982, and printed in several Italian newspapers. So all over Europe they knew about this. Yet this vital information was suppressed in the United States. Those famous bastions of freedom with a compelling right to know, the Washington Post and the New York Times, did not think it important to even print a single line of Gorzini's testimony. Yep, that's the way it is. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to jump ahead in this book and read some interesting material. Starting on page 48. Like I said, I can't do justice to this book. There's so much in here. But that's what I do. I get the book, books and I read them and share some of the material so people can see that it is out there and they can get the books. All right, some more sampling from this book. Institutions through which control is exercised. Institutions through which control is exercised. So they created all these organizations all over the world. They're doing things, and the people probably don't know who and what and why. Profiling is a technique developed in 1922 on command of the Royal Institute of International Affairs, the RIIA. Major John Rawlings Rees, a British Army technician, this is 1922, after World War I, was instructed to set up the largest brainwashing facility in the world at the Tavistock Institute for Human Relations as a part of the Sussex University. This became the core of Britain's Psychological Warfare Bureau. When I first introduced the names of Rees and Tavistock into the United States in 1970, very little interest was shown. But over the years, I revealed more and more about Tavistock. Remember, this is an ex-British MI6 intelligence officer. He would know. And its vital role in the conspiracy. It has become popular to imitate my earlier research. Britain's Psychological Warfare Bureau made extensive use of the work done by Rees on his 80,000 British Army guinea pigs, captive soldiers, who underwent many forms of testing. So you got 80,000 captive soldiers after World War I, and you're going to do these experiments on them. Oh my. It was Tavistock design methods that got the United States into the Second World War, which, under the guidance of Dr. Kurt Lewin, established the OSS, a forerunner of the CIA. Lewin became the director of the Strategic Bombing Survey, which was a plan by the Royal Air Force to concentrate on bombing German worker housing while leaving military targets such as munition plants alone. The munition plants on both sides belonged to the international bankers who had no wish to see their assets destroyed. Later, after the war was over, NATO ordered Sussex University to establish a very special brainwashing center which became part of Britain's Psychological Warfare Bureau. Only now its research was directed towards civilian rather than military applications. We shall return to that super secret unit, which was called the Science Policy Research Institute, under the chapters on drugs. So that information's in this book. The idea behind saturation bombing of civilian worker housing was to break the morale of the German worker. It was not designed to affect the war effort against the German military machine. Lewin and his team of actuaries reached a target figure that if 65% of German worker housing was destroyed nightly by RAF bombing, British bombing, the morale of the civilian population would collapse. The actual document was prepared by the Prudential Insurance Company. I read that, I was a little taken back. Does that have anything to do with the Prudential Insurance Company we all see advertisements for on TV, etc.? The RAF, under the command of Bomber Harris, carried out Lewin's plans, culminating in the Terra firestorm bombing of Dresden, in which over 125,000, mainly old men, women, and children were killed. The truth of the Bomber Harris horror raids on German civilians was a well-kept secret until long after the end of World War II. Oh, those evil Germans. And the British were bombing the residential neighborhoods, old men, women, and children. I guess the winners of wars can tell the story any way they want to. Crazy Germany before World War I, providing a safe haven for all those Jewish people fleeing Russia, only to be betrayed later on. And then before World War II, series number 124 in my series, there was a book published, Germany Must Perish. And it said the German DNA was the bane of the world, and every man, woman, and child with German DNA needed to be eliminated from the planet, the face of the earth. There's some malicious people out there. They certainly are not Christians or even Islamic people or Buddhist or Hindu. They're Satanist. Is there any other way to describe it? Demonic. And they control our world. So it seems. Tavistock provided most of the detailed programs that led to the establishing of the Order of Navy Intelligence, the ONI, the #1 intelligence service of the United States, one which dwarfs the CIA in size and scope. Contracts worth billions of dollars were given to Tavistock by the United States government. And Tavistock's strategic planners provided most of what the Pentagon uses for our defense establishment even today, 1992. Here again are illustrated the grip of the Committee of 300 has on the United States and a majority of other institutions. Tavistock runs over 30 research institutes in the United States, all of which we will name in our charts at the end of the book. I did go back at the end of the book and put a little marker here. We'll take a look at that in a little while before I end this video. They got all kinds of organizations everywhere. 1992, what do you think they got today? These Tavistock U.S. institutions have in many cases grown into gargantuan monsters, penetrating every aspect of our government agencies and taking command of all policy making. One of Tavistock's chief wreckers of our way of life was Dr. Alexander King, a former member of NATO and a favorite with the Committee of 300, as well as an outstanding member of the Club of Rome. Dr. King was assigned to the Club of Rome to destroy America's education by taking control of the National Teachers Association and working in close conjunction with the certain lawmakers and judges. If it was not generally known how all-pervading is the influence of the Committee of 300, this book should dispel every vestige of that doubt. Let me read that again. If it is not generally known how all-pervading is the influence of the Committee of 300, this book should dispel every vestige of that doubt. Like I said, I'm only touching the tip of the iceberg about what I'm going to read in this video. Go get this book. See if you can find it used on a used book site for $2 or $3. Whatever. If you read it, apparently this author says there's not going to be any doubt in your mind what's going on. And of course, I've gone over a lot of books, and I got a lot of books to go over. We'll go over this material and go over it and turn over every rock and every stone, look in every corner, every dark spot, to make sure that we get to the bottom of this. And if it is a biblical situation of the good against evil, don't you think we the people ought to be aware of that? I mean, what's the worst they can do to any one of us? They can kill our physical bodies, but we give up our souls. And I believe that's the mental mind control thing they're trying to do. They're trying to get us to give up our souls, to become part of the hate and deception, surviving by feeding off of others, believing that free sex and orgies and pedophilia and homosexuality and everything else is wonderful. And those who don't want to go along are haters. I'm not anti-anything. I think things were going fine in the world. But the opposition to Christianity and family values and decency is pushing the envelope. They're not happy with being able to be just existing like the rest of us. They want it all. The poor are going to get poorer. The middle class will disappear. The cities will become like insane asylums. And apparently, if there are some spiritual entities like reptilians or gray aliens or whatever, fallen angels or pixies or whatever, orbs, are some of these entities feeding off of our energies? Is that part of the plan? To create more insane energies to feed these beasts? I realize that's crazy. But I've only been reading books for 13 years, and I touch on all topics, and it seems like that might be the case. And we'll look more into the psychic research and shamans and Helena Blavatsky's books, Annie Besant, Initiation. I'm going to go over that material. I get on particular topics, and I start doing several book reviews on a series of books that are similar. And then after a while, I want to switch to stimulate my brain and my thinking, and I move on to a different topic. It's kind of cool. Don't want to get bored with too many of these books exposing too much of this information. Although I can't see how this could be boring for anybody to learn. So the Tavistock U.S. institutions have grown into gargantuan monsters, penetrating every aspect of our government agencies and taking command of all policy making. One of Tavistock's chief wreckers, Alexander King, as I just said, taking over the National Teachers Association. The trial run for the Federal Energy Management Agency, FEMA, a Club of Rome creation. Well, that's nice to know. The Club of Rome, who wants to depopulate the planet. This book created FEMA camps. That should make everybody feel warm and fuzzy, huh? I don't think so. Came in a test run against the nuclear power station at 3 Mile Island, Harrisburg, Pennsylvania. Termed an accident by the hysterical media, this was not an accident, but a deliberately designed crisis test for FEMA. Huh. Was that just another false flag to see how people would react, turning on the sirens in the city and say the nuclear power plant is leaking and the people run screaming? An additional benefit was the fear and hysteria created by the news media, which had people fleeing the area when in fact they were never in any danger. All right, that's pretty interesting thing to know. Like I said earlier in this video, whatever they're going to do, don't panic. It's not going to do any good to panic. Don't panic. It's the panic is what they expect. When they say the stock market is sinking like a rock, everybody just take a vacation day. Have a barbecue. Don't sell your stock. Don't get rid of your money. Don't freak out. Don't go to the grocery store. Don't do anything. It's the panic they're looking for, in my opinion. And if we all didn't pay attention, just because they said something or sounded a siren, then the effect would not happen. They couldn't destroy us or the system. But hey, maybe I'm crazy. I don't think so. I think they want people to go insane and start killing each other. White Lives Matter versus Black Lives Matter this year in Richmond, Virginia, and Alabama. How crazy and why can't people see through the intentional activities? Like President Donald Trump announcing Jerusalem as the capital of Israel when the land is not part of their land. It is owned by the Palestinian people. They've been fighting over that for the last few years. It is a hot topic. And the only reason President Donald Trump mentioned that, and it's in the press, was to incite all those people. They knew how those people were going to react. Just like what I'm talking about right now. They know. They have to know. Anybody would know. If you brought me into the meeting and President Donald Trump said, Rick. So if President Donald Trump were to call me in and ask my advice about should he make a speech naming Jerusalem the capital of Israel, I think I and anybody else out there with any common sense would say, you're going to cause an uproar. Is that what you want? And of course, the Zionists have been pursuing this goal for hundreds of years. This is by no means a small thing. This is biblical. This is maybe Antichrist material. Back to this book, it was considered a success by FEMA, and it scored a lot of points for the anti-nuclear forces. So this fear and hysteria by faking the 3 Mile Island, Harrisburg, Pennsylvania radiation leak, was it really a test? I can tell you now, things like Sandy Hook or Boston bombing, this was certainly exercises in mind controlling the people, the gullibility of we the people. They got this stuff down to a science. To me, there's no doubt about that. Except if you're just a zombie, sleeping, brain-dead human. So they scored a lot of points for the anti-nuclear forces. TMI became a rallying point, 3 Mile Island, for the so-called environmentalists, a highly financed and controlled group run out of Aspen Institute on behalf of the Club of Rome. Coverage was provided free of charge by William Paley of CBS Television, a former British intelligence agent. FEMA is a natural successor to the Strategic Bombing Strategy Survey of WW2. Dr. Kurt Lewin, theoretician for what the Tavistock conspirators called crisis management, was deeply involved in the study. There is an unbroken chain between Lewin and Tavistock that stretches back for 37 years. Lewin incorporated the Strategic Bombing Survey into FEMA, with only a few small adjustments proving necessary, one of the changes being the target, which was no longer Germany, but the United States of America. So the new target is not Germany. Germany was subdued. The safe haven for Jewish people fleeing Russia before World War I. But during World War II, it was seriously subdued. So it says here, the new target is the United States of America. It gives you a warm and fuzzy, doesn't it? By an intelligence officer writing this book. A doctor, John Colema. 45 years after the end of World War II, it is still Tavistock that has its hands on the trigger, and the weapon is pointed at the United States. The late Margaret Mead conducted intensive study of the German and Japanese population under the aegis of Tavistock, and how they reacted to stress caused by aerial bombardment. Ivan Janis was an associate professor of the project, which was supervised by John Rawlings Rees, promoted to the Brigadier General in the British Army. The test results were given to FEMA. the Irwin-Janis report was of great value in formulating FEMA policies. People think that stupid people control our world. Look what they've gotten away with. Janis uses it in a book which he later wrote entitled Air, War, and Stress. The idea in his book were followed to the letter by FEMA during the 3 Mile Island crisis. So what about the mind control people now just completely ignoring the dumping of chemicals in the sky? You think that's concerning? That people just don't see the obvious, blatant, dangerous chemicals dumped from the sky, maybe biologicals? Or have we humans gone that far over the deep end? Janis had a really simple idea: stimulate a succession of crises and manipulate the population following the Lewin terror tactics, and they will do exactly as required. Well, Jiminy Crickets. They've been doing a lot of these succession of crises and manipulated events, shootings and bombings and insanity to manipulate the population so that we will do exactly as required. In carrying out the exercise, Lewin discovered something new, that social control on a wide scale can be achieved by using the news media to bring home the horrors of a nuclear war via the television media. Yeah, they bring us home the horrors of Planet Nibiru causing a pole shift, global warming, threats of nuclear war these days, economic collapse, biodiversity, sustainability. It was discovered that women's magazines were very effective in dramatizing the terrors of nuclear war. And then, of course, they bring all these cry and sob stories on TV about a little boy who gets teased at school because he has 2 daddies on Ellen DeGeneres show and all these other shows, and they're just pumping it out there. It's intentional. If they don't want it on TV, it won't be on TV. They have all these actors coming out being accused of molestation or rape or groping, and now they're all coming on TV saying, "Oh, I'm sorry, I was wrong, I need to get help." You don't think there's a method for that, a reason for that? There's a desired result from that? There's some sinister thinking behind the scenes. Back to the book. All right. A trial run conducted by Janis had Betty Bumpers, wife of Senator Dale Bumpers in Arkansas, writing for McCall magazine on the subject. The article appeared in McCall's January 18, 1983 issue. Actually, Mrs. Bumpers did not write the article. It was created for her by a group of writers at Tavistock, whose specialty in such matters are: it was a collection of untruths, non-facts, innuendos, conjectures, based entirely on false premises. The Bumpers article was typical of the kind of psychological manipulation at which Tavistock is so very good. So they're testing, putting articles in McCall's magazines, etc., that are totally bogus, and probably trying to see just how many people in the public will believe it. And then fine-tuning it to make those articles even sound more real so they get a high percentage of believers for bogus material. You think? Not one of the ladies who read McCall's could have failed to be impressed by the terror horror story of what a nuclear war might look like. And of course, they give us a fear-mongering about the planet bursting in flames and polar bears having no place to go. Well, I could talk about this stuff for hours, but my time is running up. So I want to read a little bit more, finish this video. Page 52. The Committee of 300 has major bureaucracy at its disposal made up of hundreds of think tanks and front organizations that run the whole gamut of private business and government leaders. I will mention as many as I can fit in, starting with the German Marshall Fund, its members, and remember they are also members of NATO, the Club of Rome, consist of the David Rockefeller of Chase Manhattan Bank, Gabriel Haig of the prestigious Manufacturers Hanover Trust, Finance Corporation, Milton Cates of the Ford Foundation, Willy Brandt, leader of the Socialist International, KGB agent and member of the Committee of 300, Irving Bluestone, chairman of the United Auto Workers Executive Board, Russell Train, U.S. president of the Club of Rome, and Prince Philip, World Wildlife Fund, Elizabeth Migley, CBS programs producer, B.R. Guilford, director of the Russell Sage Foundation, Gildo Goldman of Aspen Institute, and the late Ariel Harriman, former employer of George Bush. Committee of 300 extraordinary member Thomas Hughes of the Carnegie Endowment Fund, Dennis Meadows, wait a minute, Dennis Meadows, the writer for this book, The Limits to Growth, Dennis Meadows, and his wife, Danelia. Jay Forrester of MIT World Dynamics. The Committee of 300, although in existence for over 150 years, did not take on its present form until 1897. It was always given to issuing orders through other fronts, such as the Royal Institute of International Affairs. When it was decided that this super body would control European affairs, the RIIA founded the Tavistock Institute, which in turn created NATO. For 5 years, NATO was financed by the German Marshall Fund. So after World War II, when Germany lost the war and was controlled by the Marshall Plan, in other words, Germany was basically enslaved, they were creating NATO and using the money from that country to finance everything. Plots to take over the world. Isn't that strange? We win the war with Germany, and those people who control everything are planning on taking over the whole world. Perhaps the most important member of the Bilderbergers, a foreign policy body of the committee, was Joseph Rittinger, said to have been its founder and organizer, whose annual meetings have delighted conspiracy hunters for several decades. So every year when they have the Bilderberger meeting groups, a lot of people get in an uproar and alternate news people show up like Alex Jones and cameras and people protesting. Rittinger was a well-trained, get this, Jesuit priest. So President Donald Trump announces Jerusalem to be the capital of Israel, and the Jesuit Pope Francis is now the Pope. I guess that would be the Black Pope. You think they're getting the world ready for something? So a Jesuit priest and a 33-degree Freemason. So this guy was a well-trained Jesuit priest and a 33-degree Freemason. And I will tell people to look up President Donald Trump's condo mansion in New York City and look at the pictures. And then go look at some pictures of Freemasonic lodges. And you will see they look almost identical. The opulence of his mansion with the columns and the figurines. You would think you're in the priest of all high priest in a Freemasonic or an Illuminati lodge. He must be one of the lead priests, if the condo tells us anything. Makes you wonder who's the Pope now? Who's the President of the USA now? Mrs. Catherine Meyer Graham, who was suspected of having murdered her husband in order to get control of the Washington Post, was another ranking member of the Club of Rome, as well was Paul Hoffman of the New York Life Insurance Company, one of the largest insurance companies in the United States, and a leading rank member with ties directly to Queen Elizabeth of England's immediate family. John J. McCloy, the man who attempted to wipe post-World War Germany off the map. And last but not least, James Perkins of the Carnegie Foundation were also founding members of the Bilderbergers and the Club of Rome. What a star-studded cast, yet strangely enough, few if any outside of genuine intelligence agencies has ever heard of these organizations until recent times. The power exercised by these important personages and the corporations, television stations, newspapers, insurance companies, and banks they represent matches the power and prestige of at least 2 European countries. Like I said before, from my research, a lot of corporations now are making as much gross national product, gross income, as entire countries. Who's the owner of these corporations? Who's responsible and answerable for their actions? They control the politicians. So theoretically, nobody, and I think that's the design of the future, to have these corporations to be the controllers of our world, answerable to no one. And still, this is only the tip of the Committee of 300's enormous cross-girding and interfaced interest. Not mentioned in the foregoing lineup is Richard Gardner, who, although an early member of the Committee of 300, was sent to Rome on special assignment. Gardner married into one of the oldest black nobility families in Venice, thus providing the Venetian aristocrats a direct line into the White House. The late Ariel Harriman was another of the committee's direct links with the Kremlin and the White House, a position which Kissinger inherited after the death of Harriman. The Club of Rome is indeed a formidable agency of the Committee of 300. Although ostensibly working on American affairs, the group overlaps other Committee of 300 agencies, and its United States members are often found working with problems in Japan and Germany. Some of the front organizations operate by the above committee include the following, though but not limited by them. So why don't I just read some of these organizations? The League of Industrial Democracy. The purpose, to disrupt and disturb normal labor relations between workers and employees by brainwashing labor unions, to make impossible demands with special attention to steel, automobile, and housing industries. Freedom House, another organization, to spread socialist disinformation among American blue-collar workers, spread dissension and dissatisfaction. Now that these objectives have been largely realized, Gershom has been drafted by Lawrence Engelberger to CEDC, a newly created body, to stop a united Germany from expanding its trade into the Danube Basin. Committee for Democracy Majority, to provide a connecting link between the education socialist class and the minority groups with the intent of setting up a solid block of voters who can be counted on to vote the left-wing candidates at election time. It was really a Fabian operation from start to finish. The Foreign Policy Research Institute. Its purpose was to undermine and eventually end NASA's space program. The Social Democrats USA, to spread radical socialism, especially among the minority groups, and forge links between similar organizations in socialist countries. Lovestone was for a decade the leading advisor to U.S. presidents on Soviet affairs, and a strong direct link to Moscow. The Institute for Social Relations changed the way America thinks. The Citizens League to bring common cause legal suits against various government agencies, especially the defense industries. The War Resisters League to organize resistance to the Vietnam War among the left-wing groups, students, and Hollywood and crowd. The Democratic Socialist Organizing Committee of the Institute for the Democratic Socialism, a clearinghouse for left-wing socialist ideas and activities in the U.S. and Europe. Least we not forget the oldest war tactic ever is to divide and conquer. That is, you get two parties fighting each other, and behind the scenes you're controlling it. The Hegelian dialectic is cause and effect. You know, if you do something and blame it on those people, these people will want revenge. Then you do something to them and blame it on them. You create a war. And you do it from behind the scenes. You don't have to fight anybody. You let the two parties kill themselves. You provide the money and make money off the whole deal. Look what the carpetbaggers did after the Civil War in the United States between the North and the South. They went down into the South and absconded with all those properties and businesses and agriculture and ranches. It was a huge financial gain for the winners. You think that's part of the plan? It always has been. The Anti-Defamation League, a joint FBI British intelligence operation designed to single out right-wing groups and their leaders and put them out of business before they grow too large and too influential. So when they do these crashes of the economy, which they've done at least 8 times since 1913 when they took over the USA money supply, how many decent people, families, who could have influenced the direction of the United States were destroyed with those intentional collapses of the economy? You don't think they planned that? They knew who they had to target? The International Association of Machinists, a labor-oriented front for the Socialist International and a hotbed for organized labor unrest, polarizing workers and management. Page 56. The Amalgamated Clothing Workers Organization, much the same as the Machinist Union, to socialize and polarize workers in the garment trade. A. Philip Randolph Institute, to provide a means of coordinating organizations with a common purpose, an example of which would be the spread of socialistic ideas among college students and workers. The Cambridge Policy Studies Institute, the purpose to expand on the work being done at the Institute of Policy Studies, founded in February 1969 by the international socialist Gar Apervez, former assistant to the Senator Gaylord Nelson. Apervez wrote the controversial book Atomic Diplomacy for the Club of Rome, which work was financed by the German Marshall Fund. It concentrates on research and action projects with a stated goal of fundamentally changing American society, i.e. to create a Fabian United States in preparation of the coming of a one-world government. I'll say it again. A retired intelligence officer from MI6 started writing newsletters in 1982, wrote this book in 1992. I suspect he knows more than I'll ever know. The Economic Committee of North Atlantic Institute, a NATO think tank on global economic issues. Center for the Study of Democratic Institutions, to spread ideas that will bring on social reforms of the liberty kind with democracy as an ideology. One of its activities is to draw a new constitution for the United States, which will be strongly monarchical and socialistic as found in Denmark. So in other words, elite families will be at the head of the country, monarchs. The center is Olympian Stronghold, located in Santa Barbara. It is housed in what is affectionately called the Parthenon. Former Representative John Rarick called it an outfit loaded with communists. By 1973, work on a new United States Constitution was in its 53rd draft. So in 1973, they're in the 35th draft of a new U.S. Constitution. You think it's going to bode well for we people? Which proposes an amendment guaranteeing environmental rights, the thrust of which is to reduce the industrial base of the United States to a mere whisper of what it was in 1969. So they want to take the United States down. And if you don't think so, go look what Benjamin Netanyahu, Prime Minister for Israel today, Benjamin Netanyahu, said in Think's Bar. Or Prime Minister Sharon, when he said, "Don't worry about America, we control America, and the Americans know it." Anyways, back to the book, and I'll finish this video. In other words, this institution is carrying out Club of Rome zero-growth post-industrial policies laid down by the Committee of 300. Well, I could keep on reading, but at some point, thank you for watching my video, Rick Miracle reporting.